Do you have someone in your life who insists on dragging you into arguments when they become really upset or really unhappy? And what the other person becomes unhappy about or is upset about may have nothing to do with you. You may have actually done nothing wrong, but the other person gets unhappy and they force you, as you're sort of thinking about it, they force you, they push you into these arguments, and before you know it, you are upset too. So, do you have someone in your life like this? It could be someone at work, or it could be someone at home, where you are inevitably always in these situations with them sooner or later, where you feel like you can tell they're stewing. They're upset. A lot of times in these situations with this kind of personality, you may feel like, I can see it. They're getting ready. They're planning it. They're going to pull me into a fight, and I don't have any choice. This is often how the person in your situation may feel if you're with someone like this. I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist, and in this video, I am going to try to help give you some tips to refrain from engaging, from letting another person enlist you into an argument, into a fight that will ultimately end up making you feel just as unhappy as they are feeling. All right. So, to begin, I just want to help everyone understand what is kind of going on a lot of times in these situations psychologically. If you have a person who isn't able to manage their own intense emotions or feelings in a healthy way, they simply, when they get upset, they won't know how to deal with it. And they will do things, understandably, to try to feel better. Okay. So if someone doesn't know how to manage their feelings well, one of the things they may do is they may look to the closest person to them, someone in a relationship with them who can't easily just walk away, and they may take advantage of this situation and do things to try to manipulate you into an argument. Why? Because that person is probably feeling really unhappy, maybe angry, sad, but they're dealing with a whole lot of feelings internally that they feel like they can't handle. So, what they do sometimes when they feel that alone and that isolated and overwhelmed is they will try to find someone else where they can get the other person upset, watch the other person become upset. And once the other person is upset too, they sometimes feel like they have offloaded that intense feeling, offloaded some of that intense anger or sadness or some of those uncomfortable feelings onto another person so they don't feel like they have to carry such a heavy load themselves. In a way, when the other person gets upset, they can actually feel some relief. Now, I want to make it clear when we're talking about a person who does things like this, the person who can't handle their emotions and drags you into arguments like this intentionally, they are not usually doing it maliciously. They don't truly want you to be unhappy. They don't truly want you to suffer. But you've got to understand when you've got a person who can't handle the intensity of their own feelings, they are operating from a very sort of emotionally primitive way in that moment. Things feel flooded to them emotionally, and they just need to get rid of it, get rid of it, get it off me. Imagine a bug that's flown on you, a huge bug. You just want to get it off you. You don't want to think about it. That is very similar to what's happening when a person gets flooded by their own emotional intensity and they don't have the tools to manage it. They often will enlist the person around them into arguments. Now, another way to put this is they will manipulate the other people around them into arguments. Okay. So let's take a step back and think about if you have someone in your life like this, it may be at work or in your personal life, in your family, but basically a relationship where it's not simply easy to just walk away. If this is a relationship that's really toxic at work, you could certainly usually walk away, but there would be consequences for that. It's not easy to walk away. If this is someone in your family that you live with, You can't really easily just walk away from family members. They're in your family. So a lot of times, the personality who can't deal with their intense emotions and they drag you into arguments, a lot of times they are in relationships with you that aren't easy to walk away from. And of course, they know that. They know that. In fact, a lot of times, this kind of personality, they may feel like you are sort of captive. They have a captive audience where they are able to manipulate you and take things out on you emotionally because you're there and because you can't easily walk away. The most important thing for you to understand is don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. Why? Because if you take the bait, you will often end up just as upset as they are. Just as upset as they are. In fact, because you were feeling fine before and they were feeling upset, afterwards, they may actually feel better once you've gotten upset and they have offloaded some of that onto you, and you may be more upset than they are. So do you see, it makes no sense. It makes no sense logically to really let this person manipulate you into this argument. And again, just because they are manipulating you doesn't mean that they're doing it maliciously. It means they're doing it in a way out of emotional desperation, feeling a sense of desperation and intensity. And they're just doing whatever they can to find some relief in that moment. Don't let that relief be you. Don't let yourself be manipulated into losing your good mood, into getting upset. Don't take the bait and snap. It is not easy to do. But one of the things that you can do is you can use what we call in the mental health field self talk, positive self talk. These are sort of mantras that you can repeat to yourself. You can mentally repeat to yourself internally to help you stay focused on the goal. Listen, if you are not careful with someone who can't deal with their emotions, and you happen to be, let's say, in an environment where you can't easily just walk away. For example, you're in the car for an hour with them, driving somewhere. Well, you may get upset, but you can't just walk out of the room. You can't just walk out of the kitchen. It's not easy to say, I need to excuse myself if you're at work and go to the bathroom and take a few minutes to kind of reconnect and redirect yourself. No, there may be environments where they do this with you and you can't walk away. But what you do have is your thoughts. And your thoughts, if used correctly, can be a resource. In fact, your body, your overall body, is a resource too. Your body is a resource that you can use when you feel like the other person is manipulating you into an argument and you are getting so close to taking the bait. Don't do it. The first thing to do is go to your thoughts and find a mantra like this one. I can't control what the other person is doing. I can't control what the other person is saying, but I do have control over how I react in this moment. I do have control over how I react in this moment. Now, if you need to take some deep breaths, that can be really helpful, but keep repeating that gently. I do have control over what I think and feel in this moment. I do have control over how I react. And you can try saying it different ways when you repeat it inside your head. You can try to say it slowly. You can even try visual techniques and try to, when you see it in your head and you picture those words, I have control over how I react. Picture certain words maybe in italics or maybe bolded or some underlined. Play with it in your head different ways. Focus on that rather than letting the other person enlist you and manipulate you into an argument. I don't want anyone to feel dragged into or manipulated into a bad mood because if you're a sensitive person, it may take you, if you end up snapping and you end up saying things that you regret, it may take you a whole day to actually decompress from that and kind of start feeling better again, because you may feel bad about things that you say or do when you react. So the whole situation turns into a giant mess if you don't practice this one technique well enough. And that is going to that self talk, repeating those mantras. I do have control over whether I react. I do have control over whether I react. All right. I know this behavior can be extremely frustrating, but every time in a situation like this, in a dynamic with someone who manipulates you in this way, every time you do not take the bait, you are practicing getting better at not reacting negatively. You're practicing, and anything you practice gets stronger. All right. I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, please like this video. You can also subscribe to my channel here, and you can check out my whole library of videos that I have to be helpful for you to help manage some of the difficult situations and maybe difficult people and relationships in your life a little better. All right. Have a good one, everybody.